But first to the plane tragedy in India, where 241 people died. But one man on board miraculously survived, seen right here, bloodied but alive. It was after a Boeing 787, you see it there, crashed shortly after takeoff. You can see it right here quickly losing altitude, then falling into the horizon. And then the ball of fire billowing from the wreckage. The plane's tail wedged into a building. Other parts of the plane everywhere you look as first responders rush to the scene in a cloud of chaos. Senior correspondent Tom Costello covers aviation for us, and he leads us off.
Caught on camera the moment Air India Flight 171 lifted off from Ahmedabad in western India, headed for London Gatwick Airport. But only 600 feet off the ground, it quickly lost altitude and crashed in a horrific ball of fire. Dark black smoke billowing from the nearby neighborhood. Video captured the immediate aftermath as firefighters rushed in. Overhead, this striking image, the plane's tail sticking out of the side of a building as rescue teams frantically searched for victims.
Very tragic and very, very horrific. And even till now, I have to say I'm in a state of shock.
Local authorities say the plane crashed into a medical college hostel just as students were eating lunch. Dozens injured, at least 5 thought to have died. Out of the 242 people on board the plane, the local police say only a single passenger was able to walk away. Viswash Kumar Ramesh, a British national sitting in exit row window seat 11A and traveling with a brother who is still missing. Another brother in the UK spoke to Sky News.
He video called my dad. As he crashed, he said, "Our plane's crashed." All of that. I don't know where my brother is. I don't see any other passengers. I don't know how I'm alive, how I exited the plane.
On board, passengers from India, the UK, Portugal, and Canada. The first crash ever involving the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, a plane with a stellar reputation and 1,100 in service worldwide. Already, veteran investigators are looking at this video of the plane taking off and noticing that the flaps on the back of the wings do not appear to be extended.
Without flaps and slats extended, the wing cannot produce enough lift at low speeds.
The nose of the plane is pointed up, indicating a possible aerodynamic stall, and the landing gear remains down well past the point it should have been retracted. Air India says the captain had 8,200 hours of flight experience, the first officer 1,100 hours. One of them radioed a mayday, but it's not clear who was piloting the plane.
This is a difficult day for all of us at Air India, and our efforts now are focused entirely on the needs of our passengers, crew members, their families and loved ones.
While Indian investigators will be in charge, British and American NTSB and FAA investigators will assist. Boeing says it is cooperating with the investigation. Of critical importance, the plane's flight data and cockpit voice recorders may provide the clues into what went wrong.
And Tom Costello joins us now. Tom, tonight everyone is asking the same question. Are there any theories on why this one passenger survived?
Yeah, and it may be hard to know right now. This is where he was, seat 11A. This is the emergency exit, and this is business class. Was he catapulted out of the plane when it hit that building? We don't know, but experts say there is not one single seat that is always the safest because it depends where the plane impacts with the terrain, Tom.
This is the Nation's Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. I wanted to cover the Air India plane crash again, because there's a lot of bizarre abnormalities around this entire crash. As you heard on that news clip, we had this sole survivor of the crash who was walking down the road, who is living, of course, to tell a tale of what he heard before the plane actually exploded, but somehow he survived this firebomb, this explosion, which no man really would ever survive. So you heard the news there trying to tell you how it happened. They can't figure out, but somehow it did. He was in the seat right next to the emergency exit. And of course, they're talking about plane malfunctions once again. So there's a bunch of things to talk about here, and the obvious ones are headlines like this: Air India plane crash in 33 seconds, 260 dead, one miracle survival. The last 33 seconds of Air India. So they're claiming that the plane went up into the air and came down in 33 seconds. And as most of you know, 33 is a code that they use where we see the number 33 revolving or involved in stories that are either hoaxes or false flag events. So The articles say things like the plane crashed near a densely populated locality just 33 seconds after takeoff. You could even type in Air India 33 seconds or 33 seconds of horror, some of the headlines that are out there. And you get the response from Google's AI about the brief but devastating period between takeoff and impact. The 33-second time frame is derived from a CCTV video showing the plane's ascent, level flight, and subsequent descent into a fireball. And for anybody out there that's new to all this stuff, the number 33 is significant to the occult. 33 is the highest level of degree achieved in Freemasonry. You ascend to the 33rd level. The number 33 is a reference to the 1/3 of the fallen angels, and it's believed to be the year, or the age, I should say, that Jesus Christ was crucified. The occult worships the number 33, and they involve 33 in many of their false flags or psyops. So we could look at that narrative of the story, how all the headlines came out about 33, just like so many other stories we've seen in the past, halftime shows, Super Bowl halftime shows that have 33-second blackouts, or just the addresses of a lot of these locations of school events that occur that are very clearly false flags, or in fact, in many cases, psyops. And then you get the other narrative out there. The Air India crash probe focuses on engine flaps. So you heard them in that clip talking about plane malfunctions, how come the wheels were still down, and how come the landing gear's down, the nose of the plane is pointed up, and somehow the plane just goes down and hits without any other footage other than the footage released where it just goes beneath your eyesight and explodes. There's nothing of it making an impact. And of course, then you have all the other weird things surrounding it, like I said earlier with the guy surviving, which we'll get into in a minute. But most of you should know that obviously a lot of this stuff you hear over the last couple of years or have heard in regards to Boeing and the amount of Boeing planes that are commercial airlines. That's part of what they're doing here. The majority of planes are either Airbus or Boeing planes, commercial airlines. And you heard them say that there's about 1,100 of that specific plane out there. This is the first time they've heard of a problem with that plane. And all we've heard about is how Boeing is not putting enough money and care into their planes, that they're dangerous. And that's, of course, part of the game here. They have plans for us to obviously travel less, which is part of the agenda. Everything you experienced during the lockdowns and the quarantines of a few years ago is the way that they expect us to live under their draconian climate laws that are coming in the future. So we know that they're doing lots of things to make sure people get used to not traveling. They're making people fearful of travel by having all these planes collide and crash all of a sudden. We have things like Donald Trump's travel ban continuing, where certain countries are under a travel ban and aren't allowed to travel to, they're under restricted travel rules. We have all the nonsense going on in Europe where they're actually paying protesters because you think people are taking time out of their day because they want to protest tourism. This is the newest thing that's been going on the last couple of years. Coordinated protests against tourism. Levels planned in Spain, Portugal, and Italy. So we're supposed to believe that the government isn't funding this, where a bunch of people are protesting anybody from coming and visiting their country, which naturally actually helps the economy in some of these countries as well, but they don't want to mention that. So people apparently are taking the time of their day to protest people from coming into their country. And of course, this all has to do with the climate change. This all has to do with the future of how air travel is going to be restricted. You're going to live under a climate tax, and you're going to live under the carbon footprint, which will control the amount of movement you can make, where you can go, where you can't go, what you can eat, what you can't eat. And eventually the stuff you're seeing going on with Boeing is you're going to hear investigations going into more about how Boeing is mechanically not doing what they're supposed to be doing with these airlines. They're going to take a lot of them out of the sky to have them look at these planes, and then they're going to build out new planes. We're going to see new fleets of planes, because that's what this is about. It's about autonomous aircraft as well, and how flying will be safer with autonomous aircraft. And that's one of the narratives that's out there. That's why you have to pay attention to the narratives. After all the plane crashes and all the stuff we've heard over the last couple of months, they slowly start telling you stuff. How do we avoid the next airport disaster like Newark? An expert says 6G could be the solution, because it's going to be a 6G grid with autonomous planes, autonomous vehicles. There's going to be no freedom. You'll think you're free if you're still, a sheeple, and you think that it's wonderful that no human beings are involved in anything anymore. You think everything's just done through technology, but you don't know the man behind the curtain who's controlling that technology. So let's go back to some of the other things with this story, including the fact that one day after this plane supposedly crashed, we had a bomb threat come in on another Air India flight the next day, so they can add that to their resume of trying to make you fearful of stepping on a plane. So this guy who survived, this is where we start. We take a look. In addition to the 33 code that they're putting all over the places, sole survivor of Air India crash recounts seeing others dying as he escaped. Now, supposedly he's in seat 11A, and he crawled out because he already gave an interview. The news media keeps talking about he's in seat 11A right next to the emergency door because they want you to believe that's how he got out, because most people immediately said when they saw the fireball, how did anybody survive? That's the first thing I said. The guy was walking down the road. Did you see this clip of the guy walking down the road? Look. So he has no broken bones. He's got no real burns. He just looks like he got punched in the face, maybe joined the Black Eye Club. And they're trying to explain to you how he got out. That's what the news is doing, right? They're trying to make sure you believe these stories are real. So all the narratives that are out there telling you about a miracle. The headlines say miracle, miracle, miracle. And 11A seated next to the emergency exit, that's how he was able to get out. So they're trying to give you an excuse that makes somewhat sense to people so that they don't say, yeah, this is a little bit suspicious how this guy somehow survived. He was walking down the road, no broken bones. And he's telling you he's walking past, others dying, or he's seeing other people die as he escaped the plane. Didn't want to help any of the other people, of course, on the plane. That sounds real legitimate. And the other thing, again, is the ticket, right? Because these are the things that they do. They leave little nuggets so that it looks like it was a real thing. Like it was a real event. It was a real flight with real people. No Jane Does, no John Does, no George Glasses. Look, here's his ticket. You see the code, of course, of 33 on the ticket as well. And they went out of their way, day one, to show you him in the hospital bed as a survivor. And here's his ticket. Here's his proof that he was on the plane. When do we see this? We see this always. We see this with tickets or passports, right? The Cybertruck explosion this past year. The guy who blew up his Cybertruck for no reason whatsoever outside of a Trump tower, right? Of course, what survived the explosion? Somehow, his paper passport survived the explosion. When else have we heard that? Well, we heard that on 9/11, right? They showed you these photos of some of the hijackers where you could see their face clearly. And they say, here's his passport so we can identify one of the hijackers. We're telling you it was a hijacked plane and it went into a building. It was a real flight. Everything on it. Everything we're telling you is real. Here's the enemy. Let's go get him, right? All very convenient in all that rubble and everything we saw on 9/11 that the guy's passport somehow survived. And speaking of which, some of the photos that have come out of the plane sitting in the building are pretty hilarious. Because weren't we told that if a jet hit a building, that the building would collapse? Remember they were trying to tell us that science when aluminum hit steel, how it just kind of disappeared into the steel and then somehow caused the entire building and then the other entire building to go down? Well, here it's just sitting on top of a brick building. Now, steel is stronger than brick. So you would think that maybe this building would have collapsed because the plane is laying on top of it. Just food for thought for anybody out there. But we know what they like to tell us. They own the science, right? They control the science. So whatever they tell you, 1 month they'll tell you that aluminum can go through steel. The next time you see a plane hit a brick building, what do they tell you? Well, it can't go through brick, right? They'll huff and they'll puff until they blow the psyop in. So the other stories that are out there are other things that I've covered in the past that you look for when you see an event that's either a false flag or a hoax, in addition to 33 code, in addition to the survivor who is likely going to testify against Boeing. There's probably going to be a big trial here where this guy goes and he says, well, I heard an explosion. I heard something with the engine. I heard the wing make a sound. So that they can continue to build this, hey, we got to recall these airplanes. We got to take them out of use. We're going to need new airlines. We're going to need more updated things. We're going to need autonomy because humans can't be trusted to fly airplanes anymore because they're hired based on DEI and the air traffic controllers don't want to work anymore. So we need artificial intelligence to run that as well. And then we just live in their simulated world where everything is controlled through AI. It's pretty much like Westworld, right? But this is the other narrative that's out there. Anguished Air India crash families giving DNA samples to help identify loved ones. This is becoming more and more of the new norm, and it's going in one ear, out the other ear with most civilians. That people who, supposedly your family members on one of these flights, right? Okay, well, they're telling you that they found all the bodies except for one, the miraculous survivor who's walking the street. So why do any of these people need to give their DNA samples? They're giving their DNA samples for what purpose? Wouldn't you find the people still strapped into their seats, burned alive, based on the fact that you're telling us you found all the bodies already and one guy miraculously survived? But this is the way that they start manufacturing human behavior with DNA and getting people's DNA, right? How about this school? Some of the events that have occurred at the schools over the last couple of years, Uvalde specifically. Right after the event occurred, they were asking parents to give their kids DNA tests. They wanted all the kids in Texas, hey, take home a DNA test, get your kids to submit your DNA for us. So we have a DNA profile on you. So we have your digital twin, right? This is one of the big things they've been doing over the last couple of years. They've been trying to get you to submit your DNA, right? Just like I talked about 23andMe. Everybody fell for all this nonsense on television, all these celebrities coming on TV talking about, oh, I gave my DNA. Who am I related to? Like making everybody curious. Ooh, Jeff Daniels is related to who? Oh, so-and-so is related to who? Oh, they're all related to each other, actually. But they were doing that to get you to, wow, let me submit my DNA. See if I'm related to King Henry IV, or maybe I'm related to Pocahontas, right? And everybody willingly did it. And what happens a couple years later? Well, 23andMe goes bankrupt, and then they sell all of your DNA. All of really what's the only thing that you have that's unique to yourself, right? And of course, I've talked about the Freemasons collecting children's DNA. That's one of the big things that's been out there for years, that the Freemasons, who rarely show their face other than coming out for parades and stuff like that, sitting at a donation table, they often have these events where they want your kids to come and submit their DNA, and they claim, well, we're going to do this to help find your missing kid. Even though the irony of it all is, if you're looking for a missing kid in your town, you might as well, first place you should probably look is your Freemason lodge and look at the people who are members, right? But that's the irony of it all. But they're good people. They want their, your kid's DNA. So in case your kid's abducted, well, we'll have a DNA database built out on your kid. So they're showing all these photographs of the family. Like this one specifically, like how staged is this photograph? Because you literally can, you could see like a 23andMe kit of some type on the table there. And we're supposed to believe that the plane crashed, okay? They told us that everybody's dead except one guy who somehow got out of the emergency exit without even a broken bone. And then they're saying all of the family members, come on in, give your DNA. This is becoming the new norm. This is what they're trying to establish. Why even during one of the events that happens at a school would they need DNA tests? If there's 5 victims, okay, you're telling me that the people were so bad, like it's not like they're burnt alive. It's not like, Michael Myers is driving you through an ambulance in Halloween 2 and you're exploding into thin air and they can't do anything but find your dental records. These people, they have other means to be able to identify bodies, many means. But now they're just specifically trying to get people to donate their DNA. So that's the other narrative that's out there. Get your DNA. Come on down, family members. Give your DNA sample so we can identify your loved ones. They want this to be the new norm. And this, again, is how they build out your digital twin. This is how they get databases with every single thing on you, including your DNA, your genetics, for gene editing experiments. So these are some of the things that I saw with this event. Just very, very bizarre, right? You got the plane. Some of the times when we see these staged events, you'll see like wings in one spot, a wing in another spot. We saw that on the 11th day of September as well, in some of the cases of the planes that were supposedly heading for other buildings and didn't. Right? You see a wing. Oh, there's a wing. Oh, there's a nose of a plane. Everything else is just evaporated into thin air. So they show a lot of these pictures of the Air India wings. Then they show you the tail of the plane sitting inside of a building, right? There's pretty much, everything was annihilated. The wings are all over the place. And this guy crawled out unscathed. He's already giving interviews describing what he heard and what he saw. Boeing's already under investigation. Again, all we've heard about over the last couple of years is Boeing, 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 right? Well, most people don't realize what they're trying to do. Not only scare you out of flying, they're trying to take, and they're going to take, these commercial airlines out of use. They're going to say, look, these planes are not made properly all of a sudden. They're all blowing up. They're falling out of the air. They're running into one another. We have to change the entire system. First, we need to get all new airplanes, right? And of course, you'll be limited in how often you could travel anyway, so we won't need as many airplanes because you won't be traveling with the carbon footprint. So we'll have a small fleet of planes, and we'll give you maybe one trip a year where you could go very, very close on an electric plane, so to speak, or something ridiculous I'm sure they'll come up with, but it'll be autonomous. So the Boeing investigation is going to lead to Boeing having to sideline a lot of their fleet. And then you're going to hear about less and less flights, because part of this whole thing, I told you many times, is about imprisonment. The way that we live is going to change. Behavioral control, change our behavior. This whole, well, you could go on vacation here, you can go there. They don't want that anymore. You saw that with COVID. They pretty much told you, look, not only do we not want you to go on the plane and go travel anywhere, we don't want you to even leave your house. We don't even want you to go to your grocery store. They want to imprison you in your home with the technology where they can listen 24/7, where they can control things like your thermostat, your refrigerator, these smart devices, your television, how much electricity you can use because of your smart meter, turning it off when they want to turn it off, controlling your locks, smart locks. This is the future, and people are building it for them. These are real psychopaths whose ultimate goal is to imprison humanity. And willingly, people are bringing this tech into their lives, thinking it's for their convenience. And next thing you know, the man behind the curtain has control over all the things in their home. The locks on the door, the air conditioner, the electricity, how often they use the faucet, every single thing. And you don't know who the man behind the curtain is, although most of us actually know who those bagel lovers are who are behind the curtain. So the entire story is very, very bizarre, but I think one of the funnier things about it, including the survivor, is just the images of some of the planes laying on top of these brick buildings and that whole narrative about how, well, if a plane hits a building, the building's gonna collapse, right? Well, only if it fits their narrative, of course. So 33 seconds in the air. Of course, those are the types of things that you should look at when you look at these stories, and then ask yourself, well, is there an agenda behind the story? What are they trying to tell me? What are they trying to do? What does this make me feel when I see a story like this? Well, naturally, it's going to make you not want to fly. Naturally, it's going to make you not trust airlines. You hear too many stories about this happening, and you go, I'm afraid. And then the next day, there's a story about a bomb threat on the plane, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's a bomb threat on the plane. The plane's got its, it's got its wing, it's still got its landing gear out, and then it's just going down in 33 seconds in a flame ball. But there's parts all over the place, and then there's a guy walking down the road who doesn't even have a scratch really on his body, other than the convenient black eye. Or the look of getting punched in the face. So lots of bizarre things surrounding this story. I wanted to cover it again specifically because of that 33 code. The DNA obviously is another thing that should always catch your attention. When they're telling you something like that, nobody's going, what would you need everyone's DNA for? You think that the family members, after their supposed family members died in a plane crash, want to go donate their DNA to identify the bodies? These people are likely strapped into their seats still, right? Or they're eviscerated, or, what happened to the dental records, all that stuff they don't do anymore? Right, because they want DNA. It's another thing they always are trying to grab in all these events that they create. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.